Okay, let's unpack this. We've got a really interesting stack of sources today brought to us by you, our listener.
Yeah.
We're diving deep into a topic that feels both incredibly ancient and surprisingly modern: herbal medicine.
That's right. And our sources cover a huge range, from deep dives into scientific reviews and global market
All
reports
right.
to a very personal interview about the cultural and even spiritual connection people have with plants.
So, our mission today is to navigate this landscape. We're
Mhm.
going to trace the long, deep history of using plants for healing,
Yeah.
look at why it's seeing such, well, explosive growth today, confront some really crucial issues around safety and quality,
They're really important.
and peek into what the future might look like for these products. It's a place where tradition, science, culture, and commerce all meet.
Definitely a crossroads.
So let's start at the beginning, which is, well, the beginning. These sources really emphasize that for most of human history, herbal medicine wasn't an alternative.
Well,
It was healthcare for, like, billions of people.
exactly. I mean, think about
Mm.
established systems like traditional Chinese medicine or Ayurveda from India,
Mm-hmm.
and countless healing practices developed by indigenous communities across the world over, thousands of years. Their knowledge base is fundamentally rooted in the plant kingdom.
And the scope was just vast, wasn't it? According to these sources, plants were used for just about everything,
Pretty much.
helping with digestive troubles, respiratory issues, managing chronic pain, boosting immunity, skin conditions. It's a really comprehensive history.
It is. And it's not just about treating symptoms, right?
Yeah.
These traditional systems view health much more holistically.
How so?
Well, in Ayurveda, for example, health is seen as a balance of different energy elements and what are
Mhm.
called doshas. Illness is essentially an imbalance in these fundamental patterns.
Okay, so doshas are kind of like underlying constitutional or um, energy types that need to be in balance.
Yes, that's a good way to think about it simply. And TCM talks about yin and yang, the five elements, and the flow of vital energy or ki.
Right, key.
Diagnosis and treatment within these systems are highly personalized, based on bringing these elements or energy flows back into harmony.
What's striking is how this isn't just ancient history in a textbook. We have this wonderful interview with Gert Coleman,
Ah, yes, it was fascinating.
who shares her personal story, growing up with parents who planted trees and flowers everywhere they lived, believing in the power of plants and good food. She connected with native plants as a child and saw this plant heritage reflected in everyday things like the paprika always on the table in her Eastern European family home.
That personal thread is so important, isn't it? It reminds us that this knowledge wasn't always in formal institutions.
Yeah.
It was part of cultural identity passed down through generations in families and communities.
Yeah, exactly. And here's where that ancient knowledge gets really interesting for the modern world.
Uh-huh.
It turns out this traditional wisdom has been a surprisingly direct pathway to major pharmaceutical discoveries.
That's one of the most compelling points the sources make, especially the WHO material. They give some powerful examples.
Like what?
Well, willow bark, used for pain relief for millennia, directly led to the development of aspirin.
Right, I've heard that.
And sweet wormwood, which has a long history in traditional Chinese medicine, gave us artemisinin, a critical modern treatment for malaria.
Wow.
Even the concept of variolation, an ancient practice using material from smallpox sores for protection that predates and influenced the smallpox vaccine.
So it's not just coincidence then. Modern drug discovery has literally taken cues from age-old herbal practices.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The WHO estimates something pretty significant. Around 40% of pharmaceutical products used today trace their origins back to nature and traditional knowledge.
40%. That's huge.
Think about that nearly half the medicines in your cabinet might owe their existence, in part, to someone observing a plant's effect centuries ago.
That puts the history into a whole new perspective. Okay, now let's pivot to the present, because herbal medicine is clearly not just a historical footnote or a small niche anymore.
Definitely not. The market figures are quite eye-opening. Fortune Business Insights reports the global herbal medicine market was valued at over $233 billion in 2024,
Billion. With a B. That's a staggering amount of money.
and it's projected to nearly double, reaching $437 billion by 2032. It's growing at over 8% annually.
Wow.
That shows immense consumer interest and industry expansion.
Why do you think we're seeing this kind of explosive growth now? What's behind it?
Well, our sources suggest a few reasons. There's a strong appeal around the idea that these products are natural, because they come from plants,
Right, the natural label.
coupled with that historical use we just discussed. And Gert Coleman mentions how years ago studying herbs felt like a somewhat, fringe hobby.
Yeah.
But within a decade, she saw friends who'd initially dismissed it start asking her specifically about things like echinacea or St. John's wort.
So a real shift in public perception.
Exactly. That reflects a broader shift in public interest.
And the market isn't just selling like dried leaves in bags anymore, is it?
Not at all. It's a sophisticated industry. You've got products in powders, liquids, gels, and very commonly, tablets and capsules.
Okay.
And their use has expanded beyond just traditional remedies. They're found in pharmaceuticals and nutraceuticals, yes, but also increasingly integrated into food and beverages and even personal care and beauty products.
So it's becoming much more mainstream.
Very much so. It's a clear sign of how widespread the interest has become.
Okay, with that kind of massive growth in mainstream integration comes some equally massive challenges, right?
Definitely.
Particularly around making sure these products are safe, consistent, and actually do what they claim.
This is where the scientific reviews sound a really clear warning. The rapid increase in demand constrains supply chains and production, and insufficient quality control is a core problem.
What are the specific dangers if quality isn't properly managed? What could go wrong?
The risks are serious. Contamination is a major concern. Things like heavy metals, pesticides, or harmful microbes ending up in the product. Adulteration, where cheaper or sometimes even toxic substances are swapped in, is unfortunately common.
That's deliberate.
It can be.
Yeah.
And if the ingredients or dosages are incorrect, you can have adverse reactions, toxicity, and other significant health complications.
And even if the ingredients are correct, if the levels of the active compounds vary wildly from batch to batch.
Then you won't get a consistent effect, right? It makes therapeutic use really unpredictable.
Yeah.
Exactly. The product might be potent one time and completely inert the next. And one source is blunt. The belief that herbal remedies are automatically safe just because they're natural
That perception.
is false and dangerous. They can, in fact, cause severe injury, life-threatening conditions, or even death.
That's a very stark warning and probably a necessary one. Do the sources give specific examples of reported harm?
Unfortunately, yes. There are documented cases like liver failure linked to specific products.
Oh, wow.
Issues like splenic enlargement and potential tumors associated with certain traditional mixtures from Nigeria, reports of liver fibrosis in Uganda.
Yeah.
Chinese herbal medicines have been implicated in poisonings, and specific compounds like aconitine and aristolochic acid are known to cause serious organ damage, particularly to the kidneys.
Those are incredibly concerning examples, and it sounds like effectively monitoring all of this is quite difficult.
It is. A lot of herbs simply haven't undergone rigorous testing. Tracking how people are using them is poor. And there's often inadequate scientific understanding of exactly how they work, their full range of potential side effects, who shouldn't use them, contraindications,
Right.
and especially how they might interact with pharmaceutical drugs or even foods. It's complex. This makes safety surveillance a major challenge.
Okay, so given these serious concerns about safety and quality, what steps are being taken or need to be taken to ensure these products are reliable as the market keeps expanding?
The scientific literature is very clear on this.
Yeah.
Rigorous measures are absolutely essential.
Like what?
Implementing stringent testing and quality assurance protocols throughout the entire process, from plant cultivation to the final product, is really the only way to minimize risks.
What kind of measures are they talking about specifically?
Well, they emphasize things like standardization of products, making sure each batch is consistent, robust quality control practices at every stage, and adhering to good manufacturing practices, GMPs.
GMPs, right. Standard in other industries.
Exactly. Those are standards for how products are produced and controlled.
And the sources get quite technical about the actual analytical methods used to assess quality, don't they?
They do. They list a whole range of techniques borrowed from analytical chemistry. Things like atomic absorption spectroscopy.
Checking heavy metals.
Precisely. Gas chromatography and high-performance liquid chromatography,
Right.
or HPLC, which helps separate and identify different chemical compounds in a mixture. Mass spectrometry, nuclear magnetic resonance. These are sophisticated tools.
So,
Yes. And they even talk about advanced ways to extract the beneficial compounds from the plants.
well, right, like different extraction techniques.
Yeah, things like ultrasound-assisted extraction, microwave-assisted extraction, or supercritical fluid extraction. These methods use precise control of things like solvents, pressure, temperature, to pull out desired compounds efficiently and cleanly depending on the specific plant material. It's quite scientific.
And are regulatory bodies weighing in on this? Is there oversight?
Yes, there are efforts. The European Medicines Agency, for example, has pathways specifically for herbal medicinal products.
Okay.
One is the Well-Established Use Marketing Authorization, which allows products with a long documented history of safe and effective use in the EU to be authorized based on scientific literature supporting that history.
So a way to acknowledge long-term use, but still within a regulatory framework.
Kind of, yeah. It's an attempt to bridge that gap.
It's clear there's a significant scientific and regulatory effort happening, or at least needed. But our sources also delve into something else entirely, a deeper connection with plants that goes beyond just chemical constituents or market numbers.
Yes, this comes through beautifully in the Gert Coleman interview. She talks about herbs not just as like chemical powerhouses,
Right.
but as having spirit or energies that you can perceive in their scent, their taste, color, or even how they grow in their environment.
That's a fascinating perspective. She talks about actively listening to plants. What does that mean?
Yeah, communing with them, sometimes feeling like you can almost hear them, sometimes understanding their energy or message through observation or even dreams.
Mm.
She shared a really poignant story about feeling a profound sense of support from a patch of lemon balm after 9/11 during a time of personal grief,
Wow.
as if the plant itself was offering its comfort and healing presence.
That connection feels incredibly different from analyzing chemical compounds in a lab. She also touches on a perhaps darker historical element, the fear sometimes directed at herbalism.
She does. She points at the historical link between witch hunts and the targeting of women healers who often used herbs.
The heavy legacy.
Very. And she wonders if remnants of that historical fear still subtly contribute to why some people today might be wary or dismissive of herbal practices,
Interesting point.
contrasting it with the modern movement to reconnect with the plant world.
And she seems to have found a very practical way to counter that fear and build connection, hasn't she?
Absolutely. Her method of bringing actual plants to her, talks, letting people touch, smell, even taste a fresh bay leaf versus a dried one.
Makes it real.
Exactly. It helps demystify them and makes them feel accessible, part of everyday life again. She feels strongly that teaching and gathering in groups to learn about plants is crucial for preserving traditional and ancestral knowledge.
And that knowledge base is growing more formal, too.
Yes, she also notes the encouraging growth in certified herbal schools and formal degree programs. So it's happening on multiple levels.
So bringing it all together then, what does the future look like for this ancient wisdom in our modern world? Where's this heading?
Well, Gert Coleman expressed a cautious hope for greater integration between the conventional pharmaceutical world and the herbal one,
Meaning?
hoping doctors will become more open, perhaps less automatically dismissive of traditional remedies when patients mention them.
Okay, more dialogue. And it seems modern science and technology are actually creating some bridges, right? Not just conflict.
They really are. New technologies are offering powerful tools to study these traditional systems in ways never before possible. AI, for instance.
AI.
It's being used to comb through vast amounts of traditional knowledge recorded in texts, looking for patterns and potential insights for new drug discovery.
Fascinating.
And things like fMRI are even being used to study brain activity during practices like yoga or meditation, providing scientific evidence for their effects.
So modern science is starting to kind of validate practices that have existed for thousands of years.
Precisely. The WHO mentions how the timeless Ayurvedic practice of using sunlight to treat jaundice in newborns
Right.
directly corresponds to modern phototherapy, but now we understand the mechanism scientifically.
Okay.
Similarly, research is increasingly supporting the use of yoga and acupuncture for pain relief practices with very deep historical roots.
And they mention specific research approaches too, like ethnopharmacology.
Yes, ethnopharmacology and reverse pharmacology, basically starting with the traditional use of a plant and working backward scientifically to identify the active compounds and understand how it works.
So not just dismissing it, but investigating it.
Exactly. It's a dynamic space. The hope is that this convergence of traditional knowledge, personal connection, rigorous science, and advanced technology can lead to safer, more effective, and perhaps more integrated approaches to health in the future.
We've really taken quite a journey through this material today. From the foundational role of herbal medicine in ancient cultures and personal heritage to its explosion into this multi-billion-dollar global industry grappling with that critical need for safety and quality,
A huge challenge.
exploring the deeper human connection to plants, and looking towards a future where science and tradition might find new ways to integrate.
It really underscores the fascinating complexity, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Herbal medicine products today are simultaneously carriers of centuries of diverse human experience and knowledge,
Yeah.
and commodities within a global market that demands modern scientific